listening to the GM Shuffle, presented by DraftKings and VSiN.
And welcome to the GM Shuffle, presented by DraftKings Sportsbook. The crown is yours. Dave Ross alongside Geoff Schwartz here on this Monday morning. But Geoff, next week, there are going to be big changes to this program, my man. I'm getting bumped for very good reason, because we're going to have Marty Hurney, the former GM of the New Orleans Saints, up to talk football with you to get ready for the regular season. That's going to be really exciting with you and Marty going forward. So look, as much fun as I've had cutting it up with you, you're going to get a real GM on the GM Shuffle next week, Geoff. So I know that's going to be intriguing conversations going forward.
So Marty Hurney drafted me to the Carolina Panthers. He was the general manager when I was drafted. Brandon Beane, by the way, what I saw on television last night for the Bills, was also in the building. So it'll be a lot of fun to talk to Marty about that. That's my first thing I might ask him. Like, do you have your Geoff Schwartz scouting report? Let me hear it. Maybe I want to hear it as well. But look, getting that perspective, I think, is going to be so much fun between player and general manager. We see things obviously much differently, right? Even how we watch the preseason, how we take in the game. So the perspective of a player and a general manager, and Marty obviously has been in this business for so many years. I think since 1990, he's been in the front offices. Obviously was a GM for the Carolina Panthers. He also followed Ron Rivera to the Commanders for a little bit as well. So he's been in around this forever. And he also, he has a radio station here in Charlotte. He's got some ponies as well, so he's into the gambling and whatnot and wagering. So we'll have a lot of fun talking about the sport. I can't wait for that to start next week.
Yeah, it's going to be great. And again, I always say this throughout my career too, like, as much as I can absorb and watch you guys, I've never played the game or evaluated it from that level. So that's going to be a really interesting listening going forward with you and Marty. So cannot wait for that. I did want to get your thoughts here to kick off today's show, Geoff. You and I have talked about it a little bit, that this preseason, through 2 weeks of it now in totality, has felt very different from preseasons in years past, that maybe they felt like throwaways. You kind of knew what the roster was going to look like, but maybe it's a little bit different this year with the only 3 games now. It used to be 4 back in the day, and that they are trying to get some of these teams and these quarterbacks per se up to speed before the regular season begins. Have you noticed that trend as well?
Absolutely. And I think it was punctuated, or has been punctuated, by the amount of scoring we've seen, especially in the first 25 games of the preseason. I think 20 went over. There's been some correction as expected about the last 5 games of this weekend. And even last night, I mean, the Bears scored 38 points and the game still went under, which is kind of shocking because Buffalo didn't show up. But I think we're seeing, I think we're seeing a lot of teams. It feels to me like, Dave, like they are caring a lot more about the preseason. And I think there's a couple of factors for that. One is teams are trying to avoid slow starts, right? The Bengals are one of them, right? And they play tonight as we record this on Monday, the 18th. And we'll see how serious they take it. We saw in week 1 how serious they took it. We have some older coaches sort of back in the sport right now. Older coaches tend to play their starters in the preseason, how they coached through their entire career, like a Pete Carroll, right? He's going to play his starters. That's what Pete Carroll does, right? He just prepares his team to play. So we're seeing that mentality. And the other thing, there's 2 other things that I think all tie together here. The other thing is coaches in the preseason so far are not kicking field goals, Dave. They're going for it on 4th down. If it's inside the 40, man, and it's 4th and 5, they're going for it. If you have a solid field goal situation, kicker situation, I should say, there's no competition. Why trot out your kicker to kick a 45-yard field goal? They know how to do that already. Let's test the young quarterback on 4th down. Let's test the offensive lineman on 4th down, the wide receivers on 4th down. Let's test our protection on 4th down. So we're seeing coaches, I think, be more aggressive with that mindset. Secondly, I think backup quarterbacks, I know they're better now than ever before. Like, think about some of the backup quarterbacks that are playing in these games, right? So you have, for example, like Chiefs Seahawks, a game that went over. Gardner Minshew and Sam Howell. Those guys have played a lot of football before. Like, they play. Jameis Winston, who started 87 games, is playing in the 4th quarter of a preseason game. So I think we're seeing the quarterback play from the backups. Like, these guys are better than ever before. They're staying in the league longer. They play a lot of ball before. I mean, Cooper Rush is on the Ravens. He's won what 6 games for your Cowboys.
Yeah.
Like a real NFL quarterback. So all these things are leading, in my opinion, to more care about the games now. To be fair, Buffalo didn't care last night. Like there are teams that have not cared. But for the most part, we're seeing that. And last thing I'll say here is we've had this term for a long time to describe the preseason, right? It's vanilla, right? Vanilla defense, vanilla offense. There is some of that going on. There's also, though, a lot of high-level stuff happening. Like guys, defensive linemen dropping back in coverage, a lot of pressure schemes, formations offensively, motion shifts, like all these regular season things. So people are taking it real seriously now, and it's showing, I think, better play on the field in the preseason.
I think the reason why we got so used to that nomenclature of vanilla, certainly on the defensive side, is they didn't want to tip their hand for the regular season, because we know how these coaching staffs go through tape, and anything you put out there that other teams can break down, they don't want to show that stuff. Geoff, is that a change just because they're like, all right, even if you see it, you still got to defend it, and we got to practice it on the other side, right? So we can do it all in practice or these scrimmages or whatever, but we're okay with putting it out there potentially for you to see, because we got to practice it too. Is that why it's also a change for defenses to not be as vanilla as they have been in the past?
I think it's a good point. Is you got to practice some of this, right, to be able to play. That's the point of the preseason games. Dave, when I was in the NFL, week 1 in the preseason, you got single linebacker pressures, like the Mike would blitz. Like that was it. And now you're getting these exotic empty pressures, these exotic, zone pressures, and bringing, second and third level defenders. It's for multiple things. One, to your point, to practice, because when you pressure like that, your corners are often on an island. So you have to practice that, right? If you want those guys to play in a game on an island, you need to practice that a little bit. So that's the reason why. And again, it actually might end up giving offenses more to think about as they enter the regular season. Like, I've never watched preseason football ever to game plan. You might look at individual defensive players, like individual things, especially young football players, to see them on film, but you never watch the game plan pressures. You might have to actually spend time now watching the preseason. So it just adds more stress to preparation. So I love it. I think it's really good. I like these teams being aggressive. And the other thing too, again, like continuing the trend, a lot of teams are trying to score at the end of games still. Okay, but we've seen like guys take knees and whatever, and like, the game's over. But teams are going for it. I've liked it so far, and I don't know if it will continue week 3, because week 3, might not be quite the same. I mean, the totals for this week are pretty low right now. But I could see some teams, again, like starters potentially feel a little bit. It's a longer time. It used to be you play that last preseason game, you get 10 days before your first game. Not anymore. I mean, the Steelers and Panthers are playing on August 21st on Thursday, and their first regular season game is not till 9/7. So There's more time now. So you might see starters even creeping into week 3 as well.
Let's talk about some of those quarterbacks that we've seen at least through 2 weeks here of the preseason. Now all eyes on the number 1 overall pick in Cam Ward of Tennessee, 2 of 7, 42 yards against the Falcons. Quinn Ewers, some backup role there for Tua Tagovailoa, looked pretty good against the Lions. Riley Leonard for Indianapolis, we know that he's not going to be a part of that conversation. But when you look at some of these younger quarterbacks, Dylan Gabriel getting his first opportunity now with the injury to Shedeur Sanders, Jackson Dart looks like he looks the part, potentially even a first-round pick at least, in a backup role. We don't know about Tyler Shuck there in New Orleans. Have any of those guys changed potentially your perception of what you thought they might be as rookies?
No. Again, I go back to what I've said forever in the preseason, right? Does it look like it should, right? So like Jackson Dart, for example, right? He's a first-round draft pick, and he's playing often in the preseason against the backups, right? The second and third string guys. If the Giants think he's as good as he can be, then you should fit in pretty well against players you're better than. Now, of course, the flip side is that it's a young player, and there's nerves, anxiety, and hasn't played before and whatnot. But so there can be negatives there, and he's overcome those to look pretty good. I'll just give a disclaimer as well. Like, it's not the regular season. It's just not, Dave. And like, I can't stress this enough about how different the regular season is than the preseason. The game planning, the speed of the game, and like the effort, the want to. And so it's good to see these young guys perform at this level. It really is. It's a positive. But I see Giants fans getting a little ahead of themselves now when it comes to Jackson Dart. I warn you to not do now. The NFL, the reason why they're so popular is this league sells hope better than anyone else. And they're selling hope to a lot of fan bases now. I see Quinn Ewers. Oh my God, he looks so good. Like, trade for Tanner McGee.
Yeah.
It's not that. So I've been for the most part, these young quarterbacks have played the part so far in the preseason. Caleb Williams played last night for the Bears for the first time. I thought he looked really efficient. We know that he has a good arm. We know that he has the ability to make a lot of the throws. It's now about the extra, right? Like, can you be efficient? Can you not hold the ball? And I think we saw it's limited sample size, 2 drives against the Bills that there was some of that. So I think if you're a Caleb Williams or a Bears fan, you have to be pretty happy with what you saw.
And I think I saw you tweet that out. By the way, you're a very entertaining follow, that it looked like it should. And I think that's a point that bears repeating, that, look, if you said that about Caleb Williams a year ago, that things looked off schedule and, maybe that was the offense coordinator, obviously different regime there. Boy, Bears fans got so mad at you for like saying, oh, these are like coded things. It's like, no. Like, you've got to be able to play from the pocket in this league to a degree. And the extra, as you mentioned, that's bonus. But it looked like it should. It looked like a first round number 1 overall pick with the Ben Johnson system. And that's got to be a real positive for Bears fans, right? Very quickly, that looked like what NFL receivers are looking for it to look like from a quarterback.
After what they've been through the last year, I can't imagine how excited Bears fans are to see a 38-0 performance in a preseason. I get it, but the excitement that Caleb Williams looked like he should now obviously translate that. You get Brian Flores defense on Monday Night Football. So,
right.
But that's Ben Johnson's played the Vikings. Like, he understands what that's going to look like and what Caleb Williams has to do to be successful in that game.
I want to talk about some other quarterbacks and how they've looked so far in the preseason, starting quarterbacks in the NFL. We'll do that next here on the GM Shuffle.
You're listening to the GM Shuffle, presented by DraftKings and VSiN.
We continue the GM Shuffle, presented by DraftKings Sportsbook. Dave Ross and Geoff Schwartz here with you on this Monday morning. And taking a look back here in week number 2, talking about some of those rookies in the last segment. Geoff, how about some of the veterans that are getting more time than what we're accustomed to seeing here in the preseason? And, old face, new place, Sam Darnold out there in the Pacific Northwest looked pretty good, 4-4, 34 yards against the Chiefs in that one. And then I want to get to the Colts, but I want to start with Sudden Sam in Seattle, because I think a lot of people are going, man, what I saw against Detroit at the end of the regular season and the final week of the season, I can't get that thought out of my head. And it didn't look really good in that Rams wildcard loss the next week either. Does Sam have to reinvent himself again in Seattle with the new offense, Geoff? And is that hard to do for a guy like Sam Darnold at this stage of his career?
Well, this is the debate about Darnold, and really quarterbacks that sort of get to this age of their career without having a sustained amount of success. It is very rare to see a quarterback just transform himself into something that becomes a Pro Bowl, all-pro type player this late in their career, and they haven't done it beforehand. I mean, there's a couple of guys like Ryan Tannehill comes to mind, right? When he got to Tennessee, got out of Adam Gase, he played much better. But still, there was a kind of a cap there, right? Geno, right? He got to Seattle, but again, sort of a cap, like he played well for 8 weeks in the first year and then sort of slowly sort of backslid a tiny bit, every sort of month. And, for Darnold, the issues that he had in New York, they weren't there in Minnesota, right? Where they had a great offensive line, great wide receivers, great tight end, great, running backs, good, incredible play caller. I was watching the Vikings game. I think they played Texans. I think it was the Texans. But the third quarter of that game, they had Kevin O'Connell mic'd up on the telecast for the entire third quarter. I already like KOC, but listening to him talk for an entire quarter and talk about football through what he saw on the sidelines was very enlightful. enlightenment. Did I say that right? Enchanted?
Sure.
No, not enchanted. It was
Illuminating. Yeah.
illuminating.
Yeah.
But he's a great coach, and I'm not saying that Mike McDonald's not a great coach in Seattle, but your play caller being your head coach like that is super important. And he doesn't have the same sort of support system in Seattle as he does in Minnesota. So to me, just from that level, we're not going to see the same type of player. You add in the weather, the elements, those things like that in Seattle, and I just don't think we're going to get the Sam Darnold we saw last season. And it is important, Dave, like when you get to a certain point of your career, you don't get judged by the average anymore. You get judged how you perform in the best moments, in those most important moments. And in those most important moments last year, Darnold failed, absolutely failed. And that's what has to change for him to get another level up in sort of a tier ranking of quarterbacks. And, he'll be presented with some of those moments this year in Seattle. The offensive lines in Seattle is played better than I think we expected. Zabel looks fantastic, the rookie offensive lineman so far in the preseason.
I want to ask you about what's going on in Indianapolis, because again, we know that Darnold's going to be the guy there in Seattle, that's for sure. And you talked about it a lot throughout the preseason with me, even leading up to the preseason, about how important it is to play. And I think the knock on Anthony Richardson there has been, he's going into year number 3 now, and we still feel like he hasn't really played. Didn't play a lot of Florida, hasn't played a lot of football here, and got benched. He's been injured, so there's been reasons why he hasn't played a whole bunch of football. And yet they're kind of trotting out Daniel Jones as much as they're trotting out Anthony Richardson. Is this a situation in that locker room, Geoff, where they want it to be Richardson, but they're not seeing enough? But it's that double-edged sword. How do you see enough if you don't give him that playing time to see it?
Oh, buddy. This really comes down to, I think, the known with Daniel Jones, which is sort of, you hope to eliminate some of the errors. You get some running in there. You get some efficiency at times, but you know what you have, right? Like that is what it is. Whereas Richardson had a throw the other day that was incredible. Got out of the, escaped a sack, made an incredible throw, but then there's the other 7 throws that aren't even close. And we've talked about this a lot. And Richardson was a guy they drafted who needed reps, and he hasn't got the reps. But the coaching staff needs to win and keep their job. So you take the known quantity of Daniel Jones, who you probably can just sort of design an offense almost like what the Eagles did with like Nick Foles, right? Like it's just like an RPO, just sort of manage him, make sure he makes the right throws, but in those big situations, probably not the guy that you can count on. Obviously outside of the Super Bowl game where Foles was incredible, but just sort of like that style of offense, right? That was running in Philly. That can sort of work for Jones, I feel like, that RPO-ish offense, but it's a limited offense. You know what you're getting, and the coaches might keep their job if they go that direction. You got to put, and if they don't play Richardson, then they're basically just admitting that, we're done. Like that's it. We've lost on Richardson, which I don't know if they want to do quite. How do you know he hasn't played enough football yet?
Feels like a catch-22 there in Indianapolis, trying to save your job, go the safe route, or the upside does still feel like it would be there with Anthony Richardson, and maybe that could be the elixir to keep your job too if you're Shane Steichen and company. I want to ask about Geno Smith in what you've seen with him so far with Pete Carroll reunited there out in the desert in Las Vegas, and whether or not with Ashton Genty, the rookie running back there, if they really could be a player in the West. Look, when Pete Carroll comes in there, the first thing he does is gets Geno, gets him out of Seattle and, said, I want this guy to be running my team. And you talked about kind of the levels and maybe the cap of what these quarterbacks, these veteran quarterbacks can be. Why do you think it was important for Pete to do that? And do you think it's the right move? Can they be competitive in the West?
Well, when you look at Pete Carroll's choices, right, it was either hope someone's there in the draft or let's bring in a veteran that we like and we know. And they know who Geno is. They know exactly what Geno is. And the familiarity with him and knowing what you get from him is super important when it comes to just let's establishing our culture in Vegas. And if we have a quarterback we can trust to just do our offense, that sets us in the right direction, right? Like there is a part of the sport. This is something I'm excited to talk to like Marty Herney about, sort of like the risk adverse, right? Like if we have Geno Smith, we know what we get. There might not be the same upside if we draft a rookie, but the risk of that is we draft a rookie and we fail, or we have Geno, we sort of know what we're getting with Geno, and they can still draft a rookie next season. I would advise people to not look at the preseason and change your idea on who the Raiders can be. Again, it's the preseason. Pete Carroll cares a lot more about than his opponents do. But also, I talk about this a lot, Dave. Like when you are looking at division winners, you have to find teams that have those so-called game wreckers on them, right? Those guys that can wreck the game. And the Raiders don't have a ton of them. They really don't. Geno, Bowers, Genty look good so far, but Genty, I don't like it. He seemed like I've arrived. Buddy, it's a preseason. It's a preseason. I know we're excited. Don't want to temper the excitement down. The preseason. So I think it made sense to bring in a guy you trust. It made sense to go in that direction. With Chip Kelly, a veteran offensive coordinator who's been around the block. So I like what they did there because I think it was the best move to make for their team to be successful this season. But I would not I would not change your opinion on what the Raiders can be this year.
Let's go further west, and we'll go to the northwest part of the state of California with the Niners. Brock Purdy limited, obviously, preseason. You look at the wide receiver room and you go, that's been a lot of talk, right? Debo's gone. He's in D.C. You got Robbie Chosen, Demarcus Robinson, Russell Gage Jr., Isaiah Hodgins here. So it's not exactly a who's who to kind of pick up the pieces a little bit. But I guess my question for you, Geoff, is Brock Purdy, is he now an elevator? Not to say it doesn't matter who the receivers are, but if he's an elevator, he's going to make those guys I just mentioned better. Are we there with Brock Purdy? Not that long ago, he was Mr. Irrelevant, and now he's got a new deal in San Francisco.
I mean, he hasn't been that elevator in the same way that other quarterbacks are. I think that's actually why we just haven't seen the NFL insiders, right? That give us these articles and help with these rankings, put them as high as other quarterbacks. As the success on the field would certainly warrant a little more attention to to those type of things, right? Like the attention that he deserves for the winning. But is he that elevator? I don't think he is. I think he runs the offense like he's told, which is impressive, right? Like he does the important things in the offense, but we saw last year, guys start getting hurt. It's just not the same quarterback. He's not going to are you going to give him what Patrick Mahomes had last season? Travis Kelce and whatever wide receiver.
What? Right.
And so, you know what I mean? Like that's not what Brock Purdy is.
One other question here before I get to some backups that I want to get to in the next segment. It's New England. And very quickly here, you look at Matt Collins, Travion Henderson, undrafted rookie, Elton Chisholm III, looking pretty good so far here for those guys. Again, not exactly household names that we talk about with what Mike Vrabel wants to do, maybe offensively and to keep his defense off the field, more ball control. Is that what you see here from the Patriots, that what this team might look like offensively? Maybe not juggernaut, but kind of that Mike Vrabel system of run the ball first, shorter passing game, maybe longer drives, keep my defense off the field type of point of contact for offensively.
It does feel like that's what Vrabel did in Tennessee, right? And right. They have a young quarterback, and let's just do that. Trey Hendrickson looks really good. I mean, there is a part of me that, again, I don't want to wager on futures based on the preseason, but offensive rookie of the year does come to mind, how much they're going to use him. But that offensive line, though, isn't as good as, what I think I'm getting with Amari Hampton or maybe even Ashton Genty at some point this season. That does sort of worry me there. But he has looked the part. Look, he's 16-1 right now. He's behind Genty, Ward, Hampton, and Hunter. Him and McMillan and Shuck, for some reason, Shuck has looked terrible. I don't know. 7th best odds or tied for 5th best odds seems a little silly for him. But I do think that the big year can be had there in New England.
By the way, if you like these type of conversations here that you're getting at the GM Shuffle, you should be a VSiN Pro subscriber if you are not already. Betting splits, power ratings, sharp analysis, all for just $9.99 for your very first month. So go to VSiN.com/subscribe. Check out all of our subscription options there. Geoff, when we come back, I want to talk about some backup quarterbacks and the impact they might have next here on the GM Shuffle.
You're listening to the GM Shuffle, presented by DraftKings and VSiN.
We continue the GM Shuffle here on this Monday. Dave Ross and Geoff Schwartz here with you. I want to get to some backup quarterback news from what we've seen so far. And the reason why I wanted to have this discussion, I'm going to get to some trades, some issues in Cincinnati with Trey Hendrickson. But when you're betting overs in the National Football League, team overs, I always say if you're betting on the quarterback, that's great. But you should probably look to the backup as well. And the case in point here is you go back a couple years ago to the Cowboys when Dak Prescott got hurt, and they brought in Cooper Rush, and he not only held down the fort looked pretty darn good, and then Dak came back, and they easily hit their win total over because they had a capable backup. Cooper Rush is gone. He's in Baltimore now in Dallas. Joe Milton is the guy that they're looking to right now behind Dak Prescott. And so far, Geoff, it does not look great if this is what you're looking for. And if we're being honest, Dak Prescott has not stayed healthy the last couple of years here. So I'm not saying you're going to have to count on that, but that situation could arise. Should we be concerned for Cowboy faithful like me that are on the over 7.5, that if Dak goes down, there is no Cooper Rush to help save them?
Speaking about your Cowboys, quickly, I was on this week on Live Bet Saturday, and we graded some of your drafts for your, what do you call your NFL futures drafts? And we got through a couple of them. We ended up getting to yours. And I love how you, Stormy, did the same thing, just went homerism. Like, I think 7 of your 10 wagers were on the NFC East. Like 4 Cowboys wagers, I think, like over, division, Pickens touchdowns. Yeah. You had Commanders under, you had Eagles under, like you just went like full, like, here's my Cowboys homerism, here's my Cowboys flag, I'm planting it. I mean, Stormy's first 2 picks, I think, were Niners picks, right? It was like Niners and Shanahan. I love it. I know my first pick would have been Chiefs to win the division if I was in if I was in that draft. So like I get it, man. Like, homer it up, buddy. I love it. It was so great. So look, I don't know how much I put into the idea that I'm going to make a futures wager based on an over wager, essentially based on the backup quarterback, because if your quarterback loses any time, like that's it, like for the most part, right? Now we've seen some situations where we've been lucky. The Packers last year went 2-0 with Malik Willis. That was great.
That's right.
The Chiefs had a Super Bowl year when they went, I think 1-1 with Matt Moore when Mahomes dislocated his knee, and Chad Henne came in the playoff game against the Browns, I think, and led that 95-yard touchdown. So I mean, there are instances when it has paid off, but that's like very small, small sample size, right? Small windows. If you lose Dak Prescott again, that's it. Like there's no, you're not staying afloat, right? If a quarterback is out for a month, 6, 7, 8 weeks, like that's probably it for your season. You can sort of be competitive, and maybe you can hold the fort down if your team is that good until that quarterback comes back, which is certainly what a lot of these teams are trying to do. Maybe Jerry should have like stopped arguing with Parsons and found himself a better backup quarterback. I mean, they're trying to make Milton this guy, and he's just not it right now. And I talked about backup quarterbacks to start the show when it came to the preseason. There are teams that feel like they're better positioned than the Cowboys. If that were to happen now, I think that making an under based on a quarterback room is certainly doable. There's 2 of them that I've done. I mean, look, the New Orleans Saints quarterback room is atrocious. Spencer Rattler, Tyler Shuck, Jake Haener. It's atrocious. The Jets quarterback room is really bad. Justin Fields, and Adrian Martinez and Brady, was it Brady Cook? I guess Tyrod Taylor's there as well, right? Tyrod's there as well, but just a bad quarterback room, man. So I like looking at unders more when it comes to that. But if your quarterback gets hurt during the season, like you're kind of screwed, man. It doesn't matter who the backup is. You can maybe stay afloat for a couple games, but there's just no way that any of these contenders, if they lose their quarterback for the season has any opportunity to do much in the postseason.
We're not doctors here, but in that same vein, you and I have talked about what's going on with the Rams and Matthew Stafford, and they had to play Stetson Bennett a lot, threw it 40 times. I mean, when you're throwing the football 40 times in a preseason game, I mean, if I'm reading between the lines here, Jimmy G, of course, is the backup right now to Matthew Stafford. We'll figure out what his back situation looks like at the press conference. We've been waiting to see him practice. He hasn't been able to practice. When you see that, Geoff, is that a flag at all that we're going to throw the ball 40 times in a preseason football game with Stetson Bennett to figure out if Matthew Stafford can't go? And if you're backing the Rams over 9.5, you better hope that back somehow miraculously gets better.
Yeah. To be fair, a lot of those throws that, the 40 was at the end of the game. They're trying to come back. That wasn't part of like the game plan, right? I mean, they had that late touchdown, I believe, right, to go. It went over, by the way, of course, because every game seemed to go over. And it was 40 passes, because again, a lot of them were on that. A couple of drives of the game as the Rams, tried to make a comeback there. I mean, he had 10 throws. He had 10 throws in basically the final, 2 drives. So, look, they're having a press conference today, supposedly, as we record this on Monday the 18th, about Matt Stafford. He hasn't practiced yet, Dave. It's not good. I don't care what the press conference says. He hasn't practiced yet. And those back injuries, have had a back injury. You can pain management for a long time. Certainly can make it through the season with a pain management schedule. But you get hit funky, you get hit weird on that back. It's going to blow that thing up. And all that all you've done to pain manage just goes right out the window. So I'm terribly worried about them. I took the under 9.5 wins for this reason. And by the way, I think I floated to you on this show previously. Super high on the Rams this year. I think they were a legit NFC contender, but not if Stafford's hurt. 37 years old, back injury. Don't like it. Don't like the sound of this.
And again, I floated out there with you too. I would not be shocked if he says he's going to not Andrew Luck this thing, but just say, I gave it a go. I can't go. And it's time for me to ride off in the sunset. I wouldn't be shocked. We'll figure out what the announcement is, but just seems odd to be holding press conferences to announce. What are you going to announce? That the back's fine? It just seems odd to me. We'll figure out what that is going to look like. But right now it looks like Jimmy G and Stetson Bennett. That's the rest of that quarterback room right now for the LA Rams. I wanted to ask you about Trey Hendrickson and what's going on with Cincinnati, because now we're hearing reports that not only is a contract, a new deal, not right there to be signed, but they're going in the opposite direction, that the Bengals might actually entertain trade offers for Trey Hendrickson. Now, I know he's been doing the sit-in so he doesn't get fined, so he's there. I don't know if that's a distraction or not. It's just awkward for a guy to be there that's not playing. It's bucking for a new deal. Now the front office is putting out smoke signals that maybe we'll just trade you. Geoff, what do you make of this mess in Cincinnati?
So a funny tweet I saw from Ian Harditz. He's put out thinking about the best potential fits for Trey Hendrickson if he is actually traded. What about the Bengals? Legit contender trying to win now with a reasonable cap space. The defense is looking a bit rough with major need in pass rush department. This makes no sense. Look, I get it. He's an older player. You might not get the return on investment. You might not. I'm sure they have their analytics department running the numbers about get to a certain age as a player, a pass rusher, your production goes down. I guarantee that's what they're looking at. But sometimes in pursuit of a championship, you say F it. Right? I don't know if I can cuss on this show. I should probably find out. You say F it.
No, because I want to use it for VSiN by the books.
Okay. We can't cuss on that show and VSiN either. I've never done it. I just haven't done it. I just know like not to do it. But I've never asked a question before. Like you just say F it, man, and you pay him because that's what's needed to help you win a championship now. You maybe deal with the repercussions of it later. Like, let's say you pay him, it doesn't work out. No one's going to be disappointed. Obviously, it didn't pan out, but no one's going to blame you for trying to win a championship. If you trade him and he goes somewhere else and gets 10, 12, 14 sacks and you can't rush the passer again this season, then you look like a fool. And you shouldn't make deals based off looking like a fool. But the point is, it's worth the investment in my mind to make this happen for basically a 2-year deal, which is what he wants. He wants 2 years guaranteed to see if you can get that magic back and have a guy who is a leader on your team. He's looked up to by the young players in a position of extreme need. I get if you didn't need a pass rusher, but you need a pass rusher.
We had Lorenzo Alexander, of course, played 15 years in the league in his own right. And he was talking about what you're talking about here, Geoff, as far as like 30. And that's normally a sign like, man, do we want to sign a guy that's 30 years old? And Zoe's point, Geoff, was that today's 30-year-old NFL player is different for the most part than 5-10 years ago. 30-year-old players with the off-season conditioning, the way these guys take care of their bodies these days. Should the Bengals look past that? Because it does feel like, to your point, that they're stuck on this, man, he's 30. We don't want to give him a long-term deal. And I think Zoe's point is we got to look at this 30-year-old thing a little bit differently than we did a decade ago.
That's very fair. With the guys that, the way they rehab now, the money they spend on their bodies, it's certainly much different than it ever was, right? And guys are extending their careers now by just eating better, fueling their bodies better, recovery better. There's better recovery tools now, right? Whether it's hyperbaric chambers, whether it's stem cells, whether it's PRP, like there's just, and by the way, the teams take care of you better, right? Practice is not as hard and as strenuous as it used to be. So maybe the adjustment of the numbers has to come at some point, because 30 used to be the cutoff. I mean, when I turned 30, I became fat and slow. I mean, I totally get it. And as I get close to 40, I'm fatter and slower. It's not a great trend we're going with here, Dave. But I think that, again, that's a good analysis of where we're at with bodies right now in the NFL. It leads, again, to my other point of like continuing, like, just pay them, dude. Like, just because also too, those type of players that are special, he's not a Hall of Famer, right? We get that. But they defy age. They defy logic. They defy what we traditionally think, is success at an age. I mean, look, the last 5 years, 13 sacks, 14 sacks, 8 sacks. He was hurt that year. 17 and a half. I mean, if you're signing up for 14 sacks a year, let's say, for 2 more years, that's a great deal for the Bengals. I do not understand their apprehension to make this deal. Just get it done, Bengals.
Yeah, I'm with you, and I love that tweet. Like, boy, a team that could really use him, the Bengals. They could absolutely use Trey Hendrickson, so it would seem to make a lot of sense. Let's see if cooler heads prevail in that front office. All right, Geoff, when we come back to put a bow in this edition, yes, I'm going to ask you about the Browns quarterback position and who's going to be that starter week 1. That is next right here on the GM Shuffle.
You're listening to the GM Shuffle, presented by DraftKings and VSiN.
We are back on the GM Shuffle. Dave Ross and Geoff Schwartz here with you on this Monday. And Geoff, it's been a topic that you and I have talked about a lot over the last couple of months here. And we're getting closer. One more preseason game to go. And that is, I know, Cleveland Browns might not be the sexiest team this year. Low win total, 4.5. But who's going to be that week 1 quarterback in the regular season? Now, we saw Dylan Gabriel get the start. He was banged up, so he couldn't go in preseason game number 1. Shedeur Sanders, of course, looked pretty good in preseason game number 1. He got banged up, couldn't go in preseason game number 2. So the Browns are optimistic that Shedeur can go in preseason game number 3. Unlike some of these other battles that we've talked about, is this one, I don't want to say the question is moot, but is this all a smokescreen and it's still going to be Joe Flacco week 1 or Kenny Pickett, one of those 2 veterans? Or do you think they're really looking at these rookies, Geoff, and trying to figure out the pecking order of who might be next to play if it's not one of those veterans?
So I think I've nailed this. I'm going to give myself a pat on the back. I thought there were 2 competitions from the start. Joe Flacco and Kenny Pickett for the starting job. Loser is gone. And then there's a backup competition between Sanders and Gabriel. And you have to look at what we've seen in practice, which is Joe Flacco taking all the first team reps. It's that simple, right? He's been there, the first team reps. So the preseason game doesn't matter. The starters are not playing. So like Sanders and Gabriel are playing with the backups, and both guys got a chance to run the offense for extended period of time. And we saw, I think, a little difference in both quarterbacks. I thought all along Gabriel, they drafted Gabriel to be a backup, and that's what his career is going to be, in my opinion. He's going to be a Chase Daniel, man. He'll be in the NFL 15 years. Good teammate, smart, won't mess up very often. The interception was bad, but that's just a mistake he doesn't make very often. He's just going to be reliable. And then Sanders, to me, it feels like fifth round. They're like, he's still here. Well, let's grab Sanders. And I think Sanders is better than Gabriel. And those two are competing for the backup job. I think Sanders will jump ahead of Gabriel. And you basically end up with Joe Flacco starting. Sanders will be the backup, and Gabriel will be the third quarterback. At some point this season, there'll be enough of Joe Flacco. Like, this is not working. Remember, Joe Flacco didn't play that well last season in Indianapolis. They tried to bench Anthony Richardson. It didn't work out. And then in comes Shadur Sanders. Maybe Gabriel gets to start at some point this season as well. But what's crazy about this situation too, Dave, is like, Stefanski's a really good coach. And they're going to win like 3 games. Are they going to fire him? He will be picked up one day after he gets fired. It's such an odd situation they have in Cleveland. It's their fault. It's Deshaun Watson. I mean, they went and made that move and paid him all that money and whatnot. But I think that's the way it's working out. Flacco wins a job. Pickett's gone. Sanders is backup 2. Gabriel's backup 3. I guess backup 1, backup 2.
I'll be interested too, because I like your hypothesis there. Like, what would happen with Kenny Pickett? He'll get picked up somewhere. That would be interesting domino to fall there for potential backup quarterback somewhere else. But it does feel like you're going to carry both rookies. You can't carry 4 quarterbacks. I don't see that world. So I'm picking up exactly what you're putting down there. Do you read anything in DC that Terry McLaurin's been activated off the PUP list? He had a bum ankle. We know that, kind of like Trey Hendrickson in Cincinnati that we talked about, he is bucking for a new deal. And he and management have been kind of going back and forth a little bit in the court of public opinion there. When you activate him off the PUP list with no progress made on that new deal, at least not that we're aware of here publicly, is there any smoke there? Is this like, now the team's like, no. Now that you're off the PUP list, we need you to be at practice. And Terry's like, hey, not until I get a new deal. How does this whole thing play out?
Yeah, my guess is that if he's activated, they expect him to practice.
Right.
Kind of simple, right? Like,
yep.
So I'm curious to see if he's back on the practice field. Maybe the thought process is, if I get back on the practice field and start practicing, they see how important I am to the team, I'll get my deal. But here's the thing. I think I told you this before, right? There comes a certain point when the contract negotiation time is done and the play time is upon us, right? And that's the dance these teams and players have, right? Where it's like, the player knows, okay, I got this amount of time to get this deal done, and I got to be back in practice. I can play well week 1. Because in the end, obviously, what you do well on Sundays will matter to getting paid. And at what point is it a detriment to my career to miss more practice time? And teams know they can sometimes wait the player out, and also the team wants the player to be practicing so they can get ready to play for the season too. There's a mutual benefit to him playing right now, even though he's upset he doesn't have a deal. So that's where I see this being at. It's like I got to come back because I need to be ready to play the regular season. A couple weeks away now, and it's time to start. The Commanders are probably telling him too, like, "Hey man, like, come on, man, like it's time to play ball. Like, let's get ready to go and remember for the season."
This situation right now with Rashee Rice with the Chiefs, speaking of wide receivers here. So there does seem to be some punishment that's going to be adjudicated by the league to Rashee Rice, but they've put this on the back burner for now. He's due to have a disciplinary hearing on September 30th. This feels like the longest prolonged potential wait of a suspension for like a year and a half now, Geoff.
Yeah.
For the Chiefs and for Rashee Rice. What do you make of this? Because some of the things like we saw with Minnesota and Addison, they kind of, all right, you're going to miss the first beginning of the year. Okay, they know what the punishment is. They move forward. It feels like this thing just keeps getting pushed down the line a little bit. He's going to be available to play against the Chargers in week 1, and we believe for the first couple weeks until that hearing on the 30th. Is this just playing a game to kick the can, and eventually something's going to happen with him? We just don't know what.
So it's actually very simple. So if you want to make everything a conspiracy, you can. And I know some people have tried to do this, but if you think logically about it, it's not very difficult. So the NFL said they're going to wait to basically punish Rashee Rice until after his his court case was finished. And he pled guilty, I believe, July 17th. And the next step is under the personal conduct policy is there is a suspension proposed by the NFL. And the player has the right to basically appeal it or deny essentially the suspension. Like, I'm going to fight you on the suspension. And so instead of like the back and forth, I think of like, you're spending 10 games and here's my appeal and here's very public about it. They tried to do it behind the scenes and it didn't work out. So now they're going to go to the next step, which is a third party gets to decide what the punishment was. And then, of course, you can appeal that, by the way. Like, there's still a process to go. So they're just following the process, Dave. They're following the process. It's that simple. There's no conspiracy. There's nothing that they're favoring the Chiefs. Look, the Chiefs have a tough schedule no matter what. I think they'd much rather have Rashee Rice for 12 straight weeks than 4 or 5 weeks off a month and then play again. So it doesn't benefit anyone. And they're still talking about him being suspended, maybe commissioner exemplis, like something like that to start the season off. But this feels very much like the process that should be followed. And I do not think that there's anything nefarious about what they're doing here. This is how it works. Other players were suspended under different policies, like the substance abuse policy. That's not the personal conduct. They're two separate things, okay? And this is the way that this is collectively bargained.
Let me ask you about one more wide receiver. And this is interesting to me, Geoff, because the Eagles traded for John Mechie III from the Texans. We know about his history in battling cancer and the injuries he's had, and everybody's been rooting for Mechie to be able to kind of get his career kickstarted after his glory days at Alabama. And it's kind of one of those smaller moves. Harrison Bryant, the tight end, is going to go over to Houston for that, because you kind of look at Houston and go, boy, they need receivers. And then I asked the question of, man, when you're making a trade with Howie Roseman, like, my antenna goes up and I go, Howie normally gets the better of these deals. What do you make of this deal? And do you think this is Philadelphia potentially getting a steal in a guy like Mechie if he can stay healthy? And we all hope that the good health follows him to Philadelphia.
I love that every trade the Eagles do is perceived by the public as like a 4D chess move. The Howie Roseman is like, he strikes again. Now, look, this is, again, a high upside, low risk. If Mechie becomes really good, then you've added another weapon. You've added a third, fourth, fifth wide receiver, depending on where he slots on the depth chart. Doesn't work out. Oh, well, it just didn't work out. So the thing about Howie Roseman is I just love the constant need to be aggressive, right? And never slowing down, never thinking enough is enough, never being status quo. So I love deals like this because the upside is fantastic. If you so it'd be good, another weapon for the Eagles. You can never have too many guys in offense that can push the ball down the field, right? They can make plays, make explosive plays, make the defense have to think of where they line up on the field. So I love these type of deals for the Eagles, for anyone that can make it happen. And I think for Roseman, he's always thinking a step ahead. He's always being aggressive, and it shows with the way the Eagles play, and that's why they're so good for so many years now.
That's why I can't wait when you're going to start the new show here next week, August 25th, with Marty Herney, the former GM of the New Orleans Saints. You know him as well, former Panthers GM and the EVP of the Washington Commanders. Like if you're a guy like Marty and you see Howie calling on the other side, Geoff, like, you got to still pick up the phone, even though, man, some of these GMs, you're right. At least the public perception is when those guys call and you pick up the phone, you always feel like you're getting fleeced, right? That is the perception if you're dealing with a guy like Howie Roseman. Whether or not that's true or not, that seems to be the perception out there.
But they keep doing it. Like they keep trading with him. So obviously they're getting something in return. I mean, look, if you want to get rid of Mechie and Howie is the one who picks up the phone, then go ahead and do it, right? It's that simple.
Yeah. So that's going to be starting next week. By the way, when you guys start this show next week, what's the first thing you want to tap into a GM that obviously selected you and found something in Geoff Schwartz? And clearly that pick hit big time. How long was your NFL career, Geoff?
8 years. 8 years.
That's pretty darn good to find somebody like yourself and get 8 years. That's impressive.
We're getting to cut next week. Will be cuts. And so I'm going to pick his mind about how that process happens. How do you decide who to keep, who not to keep? How much does contract play into it? How much does, you want to cut a guy, but he might be picked up on a practice squad by someone else, or be picked up on an active roster by someone else? Like, what's the process like heading into cut down? Because, it used to go 90 to 80, but now, it's just 90 to 53 or 55. I think it's 55.
Right.
They change it every year. How many you can actually keep. 53. Let's go 53. And you can keep extra quarterback now. Who knows? Nonetheless, that's what I want to talk about to Marty. I want to pick his brain about that.
That is going to start next week, August 25th. But Geoff, I got to say, man, it's been a lot of fun doing the program with
you so much.
For over the voice score, like 6 months. You know, I have been doing this show together. So everybody, I'll be tuning in as well. It's going to be Geoff, Marty Herney starting next week. But thanks everybody for watching. We'll catch you down the road on VEASAN.